treat language and literacy as relational, right? So everyday like practices, consistently talking in full sentences with your child. Don't be afraid to use big words, right? Because they'll ask, "What does this mean?" Sometimes you can even pull on the context in which it's used.
Hi, I'm Crystal Luce, Professor of Education.
And I'm Amy Ketchum, pediatric occupational therapist.
Welcome to Plant the Seed of Learning, the podcast where we merge education and medical models to bring you science-based practical insights on all things early childhood.
Whether you're a parent, teacher, therapist, or policymaker, we're here to help you support children from the start.
And today we have Dr. Daris McInnis, who is a colleague of mine. I'm so excited to have him as a guest. He began his teaching career as an elementary classroom teacher in Washington, D.C. Prior to joining Westchester University, Dr. McInnis served as the Summer Learning Curriculum Specialist with the Free Library of Philadelphia. His research interests include family literacy, early childhood education, Black children's literacy development, and critical literacy. He also serves on multiple advisory boards, including Reading is Fundamental and Book Smiles. Dr. McInnis holds a doctorate in reading, writing, and literacy from the University of Pennsylvania and a master's in early childhood education from Trinity University. He is also a Tillman Scholar and served 5 years on active duty in the U.S. Army as an Ordnance Logistics Officer. Today, he is an assistant professor at Westchester University in the Literacy Department. In this episode, Dr. McInnis will share why early literacy skills are foundational to development of reading skills. We will learn why parents and guardians play a vital role in supporting structured literacy at home. Early literacy skills can be developed beginning at birth. So let's start this podcast off. We're so excited Daris is here with us. We'll start off with a fact or fiction. Early reading is an instinctual skill, like learning to speak.
False. Fiction.
Yeah,
I
excellent.
agree. I agree.
Completely.
Action.
Learning to speak is a natural process for most children, driven by those innate language instincts that sparks linguistic abilities in the early years, which is amazing. However, reading is a different ballgame. Unlike speech, reading is not instinctual, but develops with direct and explicit instruction. Creating environments enrich early literacy activities such as lap reading and serve and return conversations begins to develop that necessary vocabulary and also syntax elements foundational to development. One of the most fascinating aspects of learning to read is the brain's ability to turn those unfamiliar words into instantly recognizable ones. It's so cool when you see kids start to do this. And this ability is crucial for developing fluency and comprehension. So let's start by hearing our expert today by defining early literacy. Daris, can you tell us why early literacy is the foundation for reading and writing starting at birth?
Sure. I want to say thank you both for inviting me. I love the podcast and I'm excited to talk with you all today. So when we hear the term early literacy, this refers to the skills, the knowledge, and the attitudes that precede conventional reading and writing. It's also before it's long before a child can learn how to decode print. And from birth, this can be early interactions like talking, singing, storytelling, play. All of these things, they build their oral language, vocabulary, background knowledge for children. Kids who have stronger emergent like skills within this in the preschool years, they tend to perform better in reading and writing throughout school, and it shows that these early experiences form a foundation for the kids when they grow and they go to middle school and they go to high school and then eventually beyond that for academic literacy. So it really is a nice kind of like a head start, if you will.
Oh, I love how you made a connection to preschool and the importance of the preschool setting
Mhm.
and how it sets children up for success. It makes me think, well, actually wish that every child had the opportunity to be in an amazing preschool setting before kindergarten.
Yeah, I think the data is just coming out now of 2025, how many preschools unfortunately aren't considered the highest quality preschool for early learning in America. So I think
Mm,
that's such an important piece. But Darius, welcome. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast today. I
Thank you.
have a question. So, I work in the NICU. We encourage reading to babies as soon as they're born. We have board books at the bedsides, and parents read to their babies when they're only 2 or 3 little pounds. And babies are already opening their eyes and turning toward their parents' faces and so engaged and listening. But I do know that oral language and vocabulary development don't necessarily have to be developed just through reading books. So tell us, what are some other activities and things that you would suggest to encourage development without books if we don't have books?
Sure. So one of the things that I talk with parents about how kids can build these skills is as basic as this may sound, back and forth conversations where a parent can follow a child's lead and sort of like expand on things that they're talking about. And I love to probe with open-ended types of questions to really deepen the narrative and explanatory language. When I taught preschool three in DC, one of the things that one of my kids he brought up, he was 3 years old, and he kept asking, he was like, why is it that certain things float and certain things sink? And he talked about it with his mom, and she came to school, and she was like, hey, do you think that you can teach a unit on this? And so we turned this into a unit on the elements of what buoyancy is. And his grandfather came in because his grandfather worked on boats, and we did all these experiments. And so that just came from one conversation.
Yes,
And
love that.
uh, yeah, I would also say things like the everyday routines that
Mhm.
parents have.
Uh-huh.
So meals, bath time, car rides, right? These are opportunities to talk about things and also to label things around the house. Um, I would say play-based storytelling where you can act out stories with toys and puppets, dramatic play, some narrative co-construction. These things help to build the vocabulary diversity that kids have, their story coherence. I would say intentionally teach and recycle some new words during play, right? Where you can say, this is enormous. It's bigger than big. What else can be enormous, right? Where you can use some gestures, some visuals, child-friendly definitions. And I would also encourage parents to think about oral explanation and reasoning, particularly when you read books, right? What do you think will happen next? Why do you think this will happen? Why did the tower fall? All of these elements to sort of build on the complex syntax and the inferential language that happens for kids, both key to later like reading engagement and comprehension when they are in school and also in conversations with other people.
Yes, I think parents often undervalue just the importance of narrating what a child's doing during play, right? Just talking about, oh, I see you're building with blocks. See, what color is that block on the top? And just, having those interactions as they're playing. And I love the example you shared of child-led learning, how he had that interest and you turned it into an entire science lesson. That's amazing.
Yeah. I think sometimes as parents, we think we can't go deep in our conversations about content when actually kids devour those big content words and they don't forget it. It
Mhm.
just sets the tone for learning. When I had young kids in my large minivan, because I had 4 kids, and we'd be driving around and we would play this story game where I was trying to build vocabulary, but they didn't know it. But we'd start off with a story
Yeah.
Like almost like we're going on a bear hunt. But I would say, all right, one day this little girl fell into a jungle, and we'd go on and on, and they would complete the story with me by adding their own descriptions in the setting, and they'd add characters, and they just developed that storyline. And before we knew it, we arrived at our destination. But it was just a fun way to get them to use vocabulary and conversation skills.
Yes,
So oral
without
language,
having
so
a
important.
screen, without
Without the
without
screen.
keeping them busy on a screen in the car time. There's
Yeah.
so many alternatives.
So on the other spectrum is oral language is awesome, but then we also have books. So when you have books in your hand, there's something called print awareness. Why is this necessary? Why is this a necessary skill when learning to read?
Sure. So for those who are listening, if you don't know what print awareness is, this is a child's understanding that print or words, they carry meaning, right? And they follow conventions in the English language. So we read from left to right. We read from top to bottom. The letters form words. Books have titles and authors. Kids with strong print awareness, so they know how to handle a book, right? Where they know to start with the cover, to examine the cover, to look at the different features on the cover. They know that it has an author and an illustrator. No, they know how to turn the pages on a book. They can distinguish the pictures from the print, right? And then they understand the ways in which they work together as the child is reading the book. I just read a study, but I can give you this for like the show notes, but where research links early print concepts to later decoding and comprehension. This is because kids who understand how print works can really focus on the more cognitive energy on like how to map the letters to the sounds. And also I would say too, it also matters because shared reading that draws attention to print. So pointing to the words as you read them, naming the letters in the context, talking about the titles and the authors, this really helps to accelerate growth in print awareness and really it fosters these ways in which kids can do this on their own, right? Because as you both know, kids mimic what we do. And if you do things like long enough, like particularly for me, like when I taught preschool, I would always see like during the drop off, my kids imitating me. So they'll hold a book up and they'll say, "This is the cover. This is the author. This is," like they're like, I see them
Yeah.
like they're pointing to things. And so these print awareness, it matters, particularly for young kids, as they're learning how to read and engage with text.
That was so informative. No one could have said it better.
Oh, oh, thanks.
That was wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think this is so helpful for our listeners because I mean we know reading to children is good, but when you understand the why behind it, I think it gives even more motivation to do that. So this is such good information. So let's talk a little bit about alphabet knowledge. Can you tell us about that, about alphabet knowledge, and why this is a necessary component of the early literacy development?
Sure. Alphabet knowledge includes recognizing, naming, and writing letters, and then beginning to connect the letters to individual sounds, right? Or to their typical sounds. And what we know is that early, accurate, like knowledge of this helps for kids to be able to predict words, right, as they're reading and spelling, even when they're trying to control for other like language. So sorry, even when they're trying to control for other language skills in the classroom. We
Mhm.
also know that teaching a very small set of letters explicitly and cumulatively, right? So including the forms and the sounds. I know that we're having um, what I like to call the second wave of the reading wars around like phonics, but I like regardless of where you sit on this argument, we can prove with data that associating the letters and the sounds, yeah, when it helps kids use print in their environment, right? And so things like when you're sitting in the car and you look at the words STOP on a sign, right? Like it's not just letters that are there. the kids understand, oh, this it's telling me to do something, right?
Mhm.
And it helps them to begin to decode like words on their own. And I would also say integrating alphabetic knowledge instruction with meaningful activities. So, like songs, name writing, environmental prints, what I talked about before with the stop sign or labeling things around the house. I usually recommend that parents do that, like to label a door, the refrigerator, a lunchbox, your favorite toy or your bed. These things help to produce stronger and more durable learning than just the letter drills by themselves because kids
Okay.
can really, authentically get
Yeah.
into it.
What age do you recommend starting labeling things around the house, Daris?
As early as you can. It's never,
Okay.
I don't think it's ever too early.
All
I
right.
would say a safe bet is probably two.
Okay. All right.
I love that. I used to, because I was a former kindergarten teacher, I used to have posters of poetry in our room. And we would read the poems and I would point and, the students would recite the poetry. So I did this in my house with my children. I would put posters of short poems around our house and we would find letters that they knew in it. And they loved this. They didn't look at it as school, they looked at it as fun. So something for parents to consider.
Love this.
Another piece of learning to read is phonological awareness. So, can you tell us what is phonological awareness? And do you have games that you would recommend to encourage this skill development?
Sure. So phonological awareness is the ability to attend to, discriminate, and manipulate structures of the spoken language, right? So this comes in the forms of words, syllables, onset and rhyme, phonemes, without print. So when I teach this to my students now, I often, sometimes they get confused between, well, what is phonological awareness as opposed to phonics?
Mhm.
Phonics is a skill that you have to teach with the lights on because you have to be able to see the sound or the printed letter and its associated sound. But phonological awareness is one that you can do with the lights off or even with like your eyes closed. If you ask a child to like clap the syllables in a name, right? They can do that, right? They don't have to see anything. And then within this broader skill of phonemic awareness, so this is working with individual phonemes, and phonemes are the smallest unit of sound in a word. This is particularly predictive of later decoding and word reading, and strong phonological awareness skills help kids map speech sounds onto letters. To This also makes like phonics instruction more efficient and decoding and more automatic. And then I think the second part was about games or things that you can
Mm-hmm,
do.
mm-hmm,
So I would say one is a rhyming game, right? Where you can ask the child, do these two words, do they rhyme? Now, cat and hat. And you really want to emphasize because for younger kids, sometimes when you ask them to rhyme a word, as they're learning how to read and write, and as they're learning to how to manipulate sounds, a lot of them will kind of like hug onto that first sound in a word, right? But you want to remind them for words to rhyme, the ending has to sound the same. So cat and hat do rhyme. Things like that. I would say teach them how to clap the syllables in a word. And even as you all are listening, like right now, right? Like if I ask you to clap the syllables in podcast, podcast, right? You're clapping the vowel sounds.
mm-hmm.
Keep that in mind. It's the vowel sound within the word. I love that. And um, you can do that anywhere. I would say as they get older, perhaps doing some initial sound sorting. So which words start like un, right? So then after they understand that the endings they rhyme, and that's what makes a word rhyme. You can have them say things like do a play on um things like alliteration, right? Sun and sad and sorry,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. I would say phoneme identity and the odd one out, where you can do things like which word started with a different sound, man, moon, or dog, right? Which one of these is not like the other? Uh, I would say oral blending and segmenting where you can stretch out the word. So let's say if the word is sun, uh, mm, and then the child can guess like what sound that you're trying to break apart. And even I would even have them do things like robot talk with words, um, where I have them like try to break out the individual sounds themselves.
Okay.
Like using a robot voice?
Yes, yes, kids
Okay.
love that.
So can you do as an example for us? I love this.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so I can pretend like we're in the classroom
Okay.
and Crystal, you're one of my students, okay?
Okay. All right.
So if I say, Crystal, give me a word that rhymes with blue. Can you give me that word just in your regular voice?
Blue. Shoe?
Blue, shoe. Now, Crystal, I'm going to challenge you to turn yourself into a robot. And this time, you're going to say the rhyming word like a robot. Can you do that?
Shoe.
Shoe, blue, crew, new. Yeah, kids love to do that.
It's the
You can like
monotone,
interchange it.
yeah.
So funny. I love that. And I love how you made it so clear. Phonological awareness is something you can do with the lights off.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think that's a wonderful way to help our listeners.
Yeah, that really explains the difference between that and phonics. I think that's such a smart way to differentiate that lights with the lights off.
Mhm.
I I think that's a great thing that we could do maybe at bedtime with the lights off. You know, if you don't have a book to read for story time or you want it to be dark so your child is calming down, maybe just do some of those exercises, like coming up with some rhyming words or talking about different sounds that they hear in words. And that's a great lesson that you could do, as you said, with the lights off. That could be like a wind down kind of thing at nighttime. I think that's so
And yeah.
smart.
And clapping the syllables is
Yeah,
just so great. And it later helps children when they're learning to spell, if
that's
they're
right.
thinking about syllabication in the bigger words.
There's a big
Yeah.
word.
Yeah.
There's a big
Big
word
word.
right there. Okay.
Syllabication.
Yes.
Okay.
So Darius, you know, Crystal and I are all about kindergarten readiness. We have an entire chapter in our book devoted to kindergarten readiness, and that's a lot of the focus of what our work in early childhood. So we'd love to hear from you a little bit about how early literacy skills contribute to enhancing school readiness and why is early literacy so pivotal in shaping a child's future academic success? I would say even beyond kindergarten. Like I think we know that a child's kindergarten readiness, you know, the more prepared they are, the better they're going to be in academics and literacy come third grade and sixth grade and ninth grade. And why do we see that trajectory continue to improve? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So children who go into kindergarten with stronger oral language, vocabulary, phonological awareness, print skills, we've seen tons of data that shows that they have higher reading achievement throughout their time in elementary school, and not just on a state test, but moving from different, like from higher levels when they're doing their independent, like reading, their participation, their confidence, right? High quality early childhood programs that intentionally, build these skills. We can associate this with better like long term outcomes and social outcomes for children, particularly those from marginalized and under resourced backgrounds.
Yeah.
There's a book by Zaretta Hammond where she talks about this, like culturally relevant, like pedagogy and direct instruction and the outcomes and the benefits of this. I just read that book and I use it for one of my classes.
Mm.
These early skills support kids' self-regulation and their engagement in the classroom learning, and so kids who can access text and participate in discussions, they're more likely to persist, negotiate, ask some questions, advocate for themselves and for others, and then see themselves as people who are not only competent, right, but excelling. And
Okay.
so some of the gaps in language and literacy, if we don't address them, they do tend to widen
Yeah.
over time. So making this strategy early is not only it's helpful, but I also see this as a strategy for equity.
Yes. And
That's
that is
so
so
important.
important.
Yeah.
Jinx. Can tell we share a brain sometimes.
We do. It's a little scary.
Yeah.
All right. So, structured literacy is something on everyone's minds lately in education. We hear it everywhere. Things are changing because of the mention of this word. It's an important approach to help students understand underlying structures of the English language and English words as a whole. So, can you tell us how this approach enhances the reading abilities of every child in the classroom?
Sure. I'll first start out by saying, parents, anyone who's listening, please do not be afraid of it. It is not. It is all meant to be helpful and supportive. So structured literacy provides explicit, systematic, and cumulative instruction in phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, morphology, comprehension, and all of this is situated and it's grounded in reading science from people in classrooms, people
Okay.
who work with kids. They can show that this works. The instruction it follows a very carefully sequenced progression from simple to complex, and we use data and assessment to measure kids their skills before we move on to the next. And this is particularly beneficial for kids who may have learning disabilities
Okay.
like dyslexia, by emphasizing the structure of language. So phonology, orthography, morphology, syntax. Kids learn how English works in print, as opposed to just trying to guess from the pictures or the context that they read. And I would also say, when you think about things that are both like multi-sensory and things that are highly practiced, when you have these in the form of some routines. So, like hearing, saying, reading, and writing sounds and words, this really does strengthen the neural pathways for decoding and spelling, and for improving the accuracy and the fluency for kids. In the classroom, it is extremely important. Please don't be afraid of it. It's not. And it's not necessarily new. It's something that has been used in the work that we do. I think the folks is just trying to think about like how do we ensure that kids are getting what they need and to end up where they're supposed to.
Well, you're using a lot of big words there. Can you can you talk a little bit more about like what t tell us what you mean by morphology and can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah. Do you just want me to give like just a like an overview of each of these?
Yes, that would be great.
Sure. Well, morphology is the structure of words. So
Okay.
this is so remember when we talked about the smallest units of sound.
Uh-huh.
This is just it is the study of morphemes and how they combine to form words.
Okay.
What else did I say? Well, orthography is the writing system of a language. So this
Okay.
encompasses conventional spelling, the patterns, the graphemes, and the phoneme, like correspondence. So the capitalization in words, punctuation, and how spoken language is represented in text. Uh, Syntax is the structure of a sentence. So this is the rules for how the words are ordered and how we combine them and use them to form phrases and sentences in words. So like subject verb agreement, like you may see things like that, or like the use of clauses or sentence types. And then what was the other? Phonology is this is the sound system of a language. And so this deals with phonemes and the rules for how the sounds can be organized and combined. So necessarily um like ng can be an ending for a word in English, but not the beginning of a word in English.
Oh my. How smart are teachers that they're understanding all this and teaching our children. I mean,
I
who
know.
knew there's so many components to
Mhm.
language and reading.
Right. So
Yeah,
many facets to learning to read.
yes,
And when
it's
you
so
think about,
complex.
I know that the little babies who are learning to read, age 2, age 3, age 4, they're not reading specifically, but they're memorizing the way stories sound if
Right.
they're read to frequently over and over. That's why some kids want the same book every night, and then they'll start to tell the story on their own, and that's exciting. And then once they hit the school age, they're given text or little books with repetitive patterns, and they can use those books to help themselves learn to read.
So they're
And
doing that for themselves before they even get to school. They're craving those repetitive patterns. And when children take a book and read it back to you before they even know what a
yeah.
P or L or M is, we call that reading, right? Because that's um, building their
Print concepts.
confidence,
They're
and
using print concepts.
they are.
Yeah.
Yes, they really are.
Yeah, I also just wanted to quickly I think I may have said this wrong. So I also just wanted to clarify. Phonemes are the end of the smallest unit of sound. Morphemes are the smallest unit of meaning. So I think I was just getting excited and like ahead of myself. So just wanted to clarify that. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. No, that's
Oh,
great.
yeah. And for parents that are listening, you don't have to start thinking about morphemes and
Yeah,
those big words. Is if you're reading a book and you're exposing kids to print, they're going to do amazing things.
that's right.
Yeah. So the school age kids, when I'm thinking about kindergarten, when we used to be teaching them to read, we would rely on the picture a lot when we were teaching literacy to students. But now there's more focus on print. Would you say that
Mhm.
is true, Darius?
I think so.
Or a little of both?
I think that so I definitely think that it depends on the type of school and the type of curriculum that a parent or a family like uses. From what I can see in the field, so I teach a class where my students are in schools and they do their reading practicum there. So we're teaching kids how to read. And one of the things that I'm seeing is most certainly an increased use of working with print itself and the pictures, particularly for younger kids, the pictures helping to decode the words opposed to trying to extract the meaning. I do see a focus on print and also in apps that people are using. So like with ABC Mouse, I don't know if you've ever seen, kids use that. They've been doing a lot of work with print, with tracing the letters and reading the letters and showing things like directionality, so reading from left to right, up, down, and things like that.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm. So, Darius, we always like to end our podcasts with one tip or piece of advice that you can give to our listeners that they can use today or tomorrow, right away with their children. What would you give as your top tip pertaining to literacy skill development?
Can I do an honorable mention too?
Of course
Yes.
you can.
Okay. So my honorable mention is to continue to consume and engage. So podcasts like this one, different books that you can get your hands on, just always engage with readings, with podcasts, with YouTube videos, etc.
Mhm.
The second piece I would say is treat language and literacy as relational, right? So everyday like practices consistently talking in full sentences with your child. Don't be afraid to use big words, right? Because they'll ask, "What does this mean?" Sometimes you can even pull on the context in which it's used. Read and reread text together and notice and play with sounds and letters. Invite them to use print and stories to make sense of words, even if they're quote unquote nonsense words, or words that we don't use in English. Um, I I love this idea of invented spelling, where they write down a word the way that it sounds in their head phonetically. Small, daily, joyful interactions with them, conversations, songs, shared books, storytelling, writing their names and messages. When these things compound over time, they really do morph into powerful advantages for later reading and writing, and a love for these skills. And I would just say treat them as relational and know that you can do it. It's possible.
Okay,
And you probably already do it.
Yes,
I'm
I'm
sure.
sure our listeners do.
I love that. Make literacy fun
Hmm.
because it
Make
is
it fun.
fun. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your knowledge and your ideas. The games that you suggested will be so helpful for families and educators.
Yes. Thank you
Thank,
so much, Daris. It was so great to have you today.
thank you all. Stay warm and go literacy.
Yay. All right. Thanks again.